Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Dream Factory Live, where we roll up our sleeves and take a look under the hood at all things career, creative, and human. I'm Sandy Taylor, New York-based certified coach and founder of Dream Factory Coaching. And today I am thrilled to welcome one of the sharpest people I've ever met, the incredible coach, author, and speaker, the Quicksilver coach, Claire Harbour, coming to us from the UK. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you so much, Sandy. I'm so delighted to be with you and absolutely thrilled to see you still with us rather than in hospital pushing out babies. So I'm glad we made it today.
Me too, my friend. It does feel like it's coming soon. For those of you who don't know, I'm expecting twins very soon. So that's what Claire is speaking to. And yeah, it's getting very crowded here in this body. So I'm happy to be here as well. So before we jump into the conversation today, I would love to tell folks a little bit about you. So here we go. Over the 30 years or so of her career, Claire Harbour has worked in, for, and alongside organizations from the Fortune 100 to startups, those that are fast-growing organizations and those in trouble. While she long ago gave up her tenured corporate career, she has chosen instead the freedom of a portfolio of activities, all focused on human potential. People choose to work with Claire because they find balance and insight in the wisdom that comes with experience and the fresh honesty that is her natural way. I know that to be true. She sees and expresses complex things simply, connects ideas, people, and opportunities, finds deeply creative angles on problems, and says what others dare not say. Claire will not be done until she's ensured that every human on the planet has the greatest chance of flourishing and being joyful in both work and life. All right, cheers to that. Let's jump in.
Thank you, Sandy. Wow, it sounds so wonderful when somebody else says it. Thank you.
Well, yes, that's part of what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely.
Yes. So Claire and I were introduced recently. Shout out to our mutual friend, Dan King.
Indeed. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. So I had the incredible fortune to be a guest on her podcast, the Career Quicksilver. And she rocked my world a little bit with a beautiful gift of telling me back my story. So I guess the way that feels right to kind of launch into this is to say how that all went down. And you had me tell my story with in about 10 minutes. And you didn't have prior knowledge of much of me. And from those 10 minutes, from me just explaining who I am, what I've done, you were able to ask some deeper questions, and then in a matter of moments, and I still don't know how you do this. I'm so curious about the process of what you do behind the scenes here. But you came back to me with a version of myself and my life and my essence that made me feel so empowered, because it was authentic, but it was also something that I never could have put together or said myself. So you were able to make these connections of my experience, my strength, and paint this picture of me that, and how I move through the world also, that you captured and were able to pull out. So thank you for that incredible gift. And I guess my first curiosity is why do you gravitate so heavily to this story when it comes to how we talk about ourselves and our career and our work?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think, first of all, what I've noticed in the many years I've been coaching, and even before that, when I was dealing with employees or colleagues or friends, was that most people don't have the courage to step into their story and tell it in a courageous way.
Yeah.
Most of us are far more full of gifts and talents than we believe. And most people are not confident or even able to see how they might communicate those gifts to others, whether it's to a future employer, whether it's to a recruiter, whether it's to a client, or even simply to a family member, actually to explain what they do. I mean, you're very fortunate, Sandy, in the sense that you have worked previously as an actress. That's a very tangible and recognizable career to have.
Mhm.
So if you simply say to somebody, I am an actor or an actress, people will understand. They may not understand the details, but they have a vision. They have a notion of what you mean. If somebody says, I am the operations manager in a medium-sized engineering company, most of their friends and family members will have no idea what that means.
I see.
And so we have labels, which are often not easy to understand, but those labels also don't go very far in really explaining who we are and how we show up in the world. So I come at it really from two angles. One is the angle of story is a great universal element in life and something to which most people can relate in some ways. You know, people have been telling stories since they've been able to speak, and even before they spoke, they probably told them by scribbling things on cave walls and you know, lining up leaves and stones to communicate things. So stories are universal. And there's this element of lacking courage or ability to tell it. And on the other hand, there's also this aspect that most people simply don't see quite how amazing they are, or quite how amazingly they could convey their particular unique talents to others. And so that allied with the fact that really ever since I was very young, I've been writing stories and thinking stories and reading stories. And I even spent most of my youth and my years up to my final year in university imagining that I was going to become a journalist and telling stories of, you know, war victims and people in developing countries and all kinds of romantic notions. I saw myself as the next Christiane Amanpour. For various reasons, I didn't do that, which are basically to do with the fact that I cry when I see strangers saying goodbye to each other at stations. So I realized that emotionally I wasn't cut out for being in those places, even if the stories of the people in them touched me a great deal. But it just really happens that over the years, I've refined the two things that I'm so interested in, story and people being able to communicate with confidence about who they are and what they do and the gifts they bring into the world, have just come together in terms of being able to coach and work with people and encourage them to show off the very best facets that they have.
Yeah, well said. I think that deep empathy that you share with people is probably part of your gift in being able to tell the story back to folks. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm also just inveterately, if that's a word in English, curious and nosy. So, you know, I just love to know people's stories. And if by being curious, I can then help you or anybody else to see what that story looks like from a positive, empathic outside view, then that's a great pleasure for me.
Beautiful. So why in particular is being able to speak to your own story and speak to the way that you come across in the world, why is it important in career transition? Because I think at this time in the artist community and then way beyond, so many people are really considering what they do in the world, how they're spending moment to moment. And so a lot of people are in transition or thinking about it. So
absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think there are several things to consider. Obviously, we are in the midst of this weird global pandemic that is COVID, and that's creating its own unique set of circumstances. But beyond that, there's also the fact that in the last 50 years or so, since I was a little girl, then the whole world of careers has changed dramatically. If you were to ask a room full of 70-year-olds about their own careers or the careers of their parents, you would find that most of them hadn't changed job or company or location more than perhaps once or twice, unless they had grown up in a particularly troubled zone of the world, in which case they might have. But for most people over the age of 60, probably these days, careers were a simple straight line affair. The cliche that people always talk about is you join IBM, you work there for 40 years, you get your gold watch at the end of it, and you go off and play golf. That doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
For various reasons, which there isn't time to go into today, but you know, we know them, and it ranges from everything from millennial angst and desire to be mobile to COVID, to downsizings and relocations and reorganizations and all kinds of aspects of corporate change. But the fact is that nobody can expect anymore to have a linear career. So whatever start we make, we can be pretty sure that we won't be doing the same thing 10 or 20 or 30 years later. And the average tenure in jobs these days is under 2 years, believe it or not.
Wow.
So we all face the possibility or the reality of very dynamic careers. Mm-hmm. And because we know that we don't have straight lines, then it's really up to individuals, whether we like it or not, to be the masters of our careers to the greatest extent we possibly can. If we join a company or we join an organization expecting that organization to take care of our career, we're probably kidding ourselves. And that applies whether you're an actor joining a Broadway theater to do a musical for a contract of 3 years, or whether you're joining as a graduate trainee in an up and coming digital company or whatever. We cannot expect others to take care of our careers. We may be lucky. We might fall on a company where there is a particularly enlightened attitude to engaging and keeping talent as long as possible. But in most cases, that doesn't happen. So if others aren't taking care of it, what option is there? Either you neglect it or you take care of it yourself.
Yeah. So in the spirit of taking care of ourselves and being able to articulate our own identities, why is it so hard? First of all, that's my first question. Why is it so hard for us to own the things that we do well and the reasons that we're amazing?
Oh, well, we could start with probably Judeo-Christian guilt or any other kind of guilt that you might like to evoke from any part of the world. But most of us are raised to be modest and humble.
Yes.
In some shape or form. And I think that most people confuse modesty with all kinds of other things that are actually healthy. So speaking with confidence and pride about your achievements is not, in my opinion, and in most dictionary definitions, is not actually immodest or not humble.
Okay.
But we get very confused. And so whether it's Australians talking about tall poppy syndrome or whatever you want to call it, sticking your head up and saying, hey, I'm really good at this, or I really enjoyed doing that thing so well, isn't liked, it's frowned upon.
Yes.
And so we get taught from a very young age that we shouldn't celebrate our gifts or our talents or our achievements or even our contributions to society. Even if somebody does something incredible, there was this crazy example recently, which is debatable in many respects, but let's just take it at face value. This guy in England who was turning 100 years old, he walked some crazy amount, 100 kilometers around his garden in order to raise money for the National Health Service during the COVID crisis. Mm-hmm. What an amazing achievement. And yet, he was consistently self-effacing about what he'd achieved. What he'd done and why he'd done it and why he'd undertaken it. And yet he had every reason to be super proud of what he'd done. What's more, he hadn't done it in a self-seeking way. He'd done it in a publicly civic and civic-minded way. So the challenge we face is that we're taught not to be confident about our achievements. And yet school systems, education systems, social systems demand that we be very successful according to a certain list and type of achievements. We need to pass this kind of test in school and that kind of exam at the end of school. And then we're supposed to go to university for 3 or 5 or 8 years, whatever the number might be. And we get tested along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And yet, alongside of all of that, there are all the other kinds of achievements that we might have, which could be anything from learning to play a musical instrument beautifully to helping people in your local community to thrive in some way, or indeed becoming academically brilliant. But we just don't encourage others, and we are not encouraged ourselves to celebrate that.
Yeah.
And so sorry, go on, go ahead.
No. Well,
I was just going to say, so sorry. So when it comes to being able, therefore, to go to a new potential place of work, whether you're making a big transition or a small one, whether you're leaving Broadway because it closed down and your show isn't on anymore and you need to go and work in the retail industry, or you decide you want to try your hand at working in marketing in a creative company, whatever it might be. You're faced with this challenge. How do I convey the things that I could bring to this job?
Yes.
So there'll be a job description and there'll be a list of things that they say they think they want from you. That may be well written, it may not be well written, but again, it's up to you about what you come and tell.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are, for instance, an actor who's been working on Broadway, then you undoubtedly have huge collaboration skills, an ability to work in a team, an ability to react flexibly to all kinds of unexpected situations, an ability to work under pressure, an ability to create, an ability to respond to direction. You've got resilience, because just to get that part on Broadway, you had to be rejected 100 million times before you got the yes.
Right.
You've got so many skills that are immediately transferable to other places.
Yes.
But finding the voice to tell that story, or even recognizing where the crossover is between the skills that are defined as being skills of actors compared to the skills that are defined to being the skills of people who work in marketing, you may not necessarily see that bridge. But if you can use the story, and if you can have help and support in identifying what those skills and strengths are that you bring, then you have a chance of making it.
Yes, agreed. And what was so striking when you retold me my story, it wasn't about necessarily the achievements. It wasn't necessarily about the products that I had been able to deliver or the positions I had held. To me, what was so, what I connected to so much was the intangibles. Courage was a word you used a lot. Resilience was huge. And those are the things that really make up the essence of a human. And so I think that being able to articulate those things about ourselves is really valuable when you're thinking of what else you have to offer the world. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. In the end, whether you work as an actor or as an instrumentalist or as a marketing manager or as a CEO, the fact is that the information side of your job, the content side of your job, is something you can always learn.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. If you suddenly go to work in the chocolate making industry, then you can learn about how chocolate is made. It's just facts, it's information, it's wisdom that may be passed down from one generation to another. But in the end, it's just facts. You add cocoa to butter to whatever you do. I don't know how to make chocolate, but the point is, it's information. What you can't just learn is resilience, or an ability to do repetitive work in a creative and enthusiastic way, or an approach to innovation that creates amazing things, or whatever it might be. Those come from experience and life, and you choose to define them as intangibles. I think I would probably call them strengths or competencies, but that's my, business person's mind using tech terminology that's been defined by others. Either way, it's the same thing. It's the non-content, non-technical stuff that we all carry with us, whatever our path has been. And drawing that out and understanding it and being able to convey it and show how it can be relevant and valuable to the new context is the big challenge that we all face.
Agreed. So one of the things that we connected on right away was that we have an insider view of the creative community. Me, because I'm a singer and an actor here in New York, and you, because your daughter is a dancer and has chosen.
I have two daughters who are dancers, if we're going to be technically correct, and one who's an aspiring actress. So yes.
Wow. Yeah. So you've got that lens on things. And there is a reality that many of us in the arts community have to either career expand, which is how I got to coaching in the first place, or career pivot. When a dancer has decided that they no longer, can do the things that they want to do artistically, they often choose to do something else. And then I've heard so many people say, I don't know what else I can do. I don't know what else I have to offer. And I know that, Claire, you've got something kind of brewing or percolating in the back of your mind about how to help people in this transition, especially in art.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for mentioning it, because it really is a pet project of mine.
Mm-hmm.
So it stems really from this thing that we've been talking about already, which is those intangible things that you develop, whatever you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the situation you've just described is the best of the situations, like the dancer who chooses to do something else. But let's be clear, there are a lot of dancers and a lot of clarinet players and a lot of chorus line singers and dancers who don't just choose to do something else, but they have to do something else. They get injured. They can't afford to take the lessons and live on the breadline anymore. So they have to find something else to do.
Or a global pandemic hits and
absolutely, yes.
Out of work for however long.
So exactly. So all kinds of circumstances drive this change. And the reality is that whatever the set of intangibles you've built as you've gone through your career as the clarinetist or the ballet dancer or the opera singer or whatever it might be, those intangibles, those skills and strengths are transferable. Mm-hmm. And you know, if one were to draw up a list of intangibles or strengths that a dancer might have achieved over a 10-year career, we could come back to some of the things I've already said, but, you know, just very quickly: collaboration, global and cultural flexibility. They've all been on tour all around the world. Typically, they speak 4, 5, 6 languages. They've probably not, many of them haven't even finished high school. None of them have been to university, but they have a global and cultural and cosmopolitan education that is unequaled. They have all these things about resilience and flexibility and so on. These are all skills that if you go into an organization and you go to the HR department, you will see those skills all listed in different ways with different profiles in mind. But the reality is that they have them in absolute oodles. Mm-hmm. So my dream, which I will make come true one day, is to be working more with companies that are open to recruiting such profiles. Companies or organizations. I too often say companies, but I mean organizations. Mm-hmm. So organizations who would see the value in bringing in somebody who would have a different background, who wouldn't have the same educational background in the pure academic sense, but who would have a very strong experience of life and have built up all these different skills, who would have the opportunity to bring diversity into the talent pipeline of that company, to tick some of the boxes that they need to tick either legally or because they want to, and who would undoubtedly need quite a lot of teaching in terms of the information, you know, what's marketing about, or how do we do customer relationship management, or what is operations, or these kinds of things. But once again, we're back to information. That's easy. And whether you've been an actor or a ballet dancer or a clarinetist, you learn fast. Because if you weren't doing that work, then you weren't a fast learner. You wouldn't have got there. Mm-hmm. So little by little, I'm building conversations with organizations that might be open to recruiting such profiles. Most companies, when presented with the idea, say, hey, that's a really cool idea. But typically they're a little bit reluctant to be the first ones to try it. It doesn't mean that it will never happen. What does give me hope is that companies have already started recruitment of other diversity groups like veterans or former athletes, or, you know, there are initiatives going on. So it's my firm belief that one day these initiatives will include former performing artists. And I would love to be part of that. And whether I can make it be a big, important thing that I'm leading and driving around the world is one question. But what is for sure is that if you are an actor who's decided or has been forced into ending that particular part of your career, then I'm going to be one of the people who best understands what that looks like and who would have the most fun helping you to find the next thing.
I love that. Okay, so that speaks to your skills as a coach as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
So if you were to make a really big ask, Claire, who exactly are we looking for as far as these companies, in case somebody out there can connect you?
So I would say companies who have an attitude already in which they truly embrace diversity, and in which they see that there's this distinction between the skills, the strengths, and the intangibles, and the knowledge.
Okay.
So companies where there's no fear in bringing in people who may not have the exact content knowledge, but who have the potential to grow into extraordinary young or older executives, and to bring creative value, to bring diversity, to bring a different attitude and set of values and experiences that would bring harmony and greater interest to the company. So the obvious place to look would be companies that have already some sort of an obvious link to creativity. So you might think first of all of companies like luxury goods companies, or cosmetics companies, that kind of thing. But I believe it should go much further than that, and it really should be any company that has the courage to be looking beyond the obvious box checking when they're recruiting, and who are open and desirous of creating truly diverse teams where different backgrounds and different experiences matter.
All right, so that's the call to action for anybody who's listening out there, whether it's right now or whether it's on the replay. If you think of a company or think of an organization that shares those values, let's get that information to Claire, because that can certainly serve so many of us in the community. Excellent. So I know a lot of this conversation will resonate pretty deeply with a lot of folks in this moment. And I wanted to mention your book, Claire. Believe the title is Disrupt Your Career, right?
It is.
Which has happened whether we like it or not for many of us.
Absolutely. Well, that was the whole precept of the book, was this idea that either you disrupt it yourself or it'll be disrupted by somebody else.
Yeah. So let's put that out there too, that is an available resource for you to hear a lot more about Claire's view on all of the career transition stuff. So I'm sure there's more gold in there. So go find that book and get more of the pearls from Claire.
Thank you, Sandy. I just want to make sure that we don't not credit my absolutely amazing co-author, Antoine Tirard, who's a great friend as well as a partner in that enterprise. We write a lot of articles together. We probably speak every day. We've been collaborating for 6 or 7 years now, and I think we just have the most beautiful relationship in which he's good at the things I'm not good at, I'm good at the things he's not good at, and together we just have this really deep belief that everybody deserves a great career which fits into a beautiful life, and that there should be more joy and happiness in the way we work.
Amen to that. I find in the clients, I think you might identify with this too. I find in the clients that I work with, because I work with a lot in the creative community, and then I work with executive types who are also, very creative thinkers. So the thing that I find so parallel and so complementary is the agency. They know they can make things out of nothing. So creative people have that gift, and people who tend to be in positions of power have that gift. So I hope that we can bring those two worlds even closer as we go through some of this work. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being with us today. Is there any bit of wisdom that you could leave us with in terms of being able to own our story and how to move forward with doing that in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that all of us can do, whatever our level of confidence about telling a great story or still feeling a little bit like a little mouse about it, is to ask others around us. Ask everybody from your mom to your colleague to your best friend to anybody who has any positive interest in you
Yeah.
to tell you what is so great about you and the stuff you've done. And it's amazing what those people will tell you. Some may well still not really understand exactly what you do, but they probably do understand some of your strengths. So if you want some inspiration for the very beginning, is just go and get it from the people that love and like you the most. And that in itself can be an incredibly strengthening and empowering exercise, and can be sometimes exactly the right departure point for creating your bigger story that you're going to go and tell someone important, quote unquote.
Yes.
But it's just a really nice way to start the process. And because you're not having to venture too far out of your known comfort zone, it's not particularly difficult to do.
Yeah, that's a great, I love that. I love that piece of advice. And then to piggyback back on that is to be able to receive those things is another challenge.
Absolutely.
Instead of saying, oh, I don't, they're just saying that because they, but really to take that information in. Yeah.
Sure.
Love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you, Sandy. It's been a real pleasure. I wish we could go on for hours and hours, but that would bore people after that. So
I agree. We'll do it again then. We'll do it again after these babies come.
Absolutely. Well, look, thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, keep those babies in for just the time they need.
Yes, we'll work on that. Thank you so much. Have a great day, Claire.
And you, Sandy. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.